Greetings, it is I, David Attenborough. Today we've got a hell of a treat for you. We've been sent footage of a strange creature, some might call it a cryptid, and this footage very well may prove that this creature exists. As you can see, this is some masterful footage here. As you can see here, the creature's stride is nothing to scoff at. Look at that. Look at that beauteous creature right there. Oh, in this next footage, look at this. Oh, look at this decrepit animal. This filthy piece of garbage. And here we can see the way this animal defecates. Beauteous. Oh, it's violent. You can tell it's violent. To further analyze this footage, I've brought in expert on the topic, YouTuber Chills. Welcome, Chills. Welcome. Thank you for having me, David Attenborough. As you can see from this footage, this creature is not to be trifled with. There may be some dark spirits involved. Now, Chills, let me ask you, if you saw this creature in your living room, what would you do?
Honestly, if I saw that damn thing in my living room, I'd stomp on it until it was a small brown stain.
Thank you, Chills. Thank you. I've been David Attenborough, and I'm going to go make love to my fucking wife.
Yo, who the fuck is MattCMG?
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another schizo-pilled episode of Internet Idiocracy, the show where we make fun of the brain-dead shit from all corners of the internet. I'm your host, MattCMG, and for today's spooky Halloween episode, let's talk about cryptids. In case you don't know, cryptids are animals or creatures that people claim to exist but either don't exist or have simply never had their existence proven by science. You know, you got your Bigfoots, your Loch Ness Monsters, all that shit. And this is a video I've wanted to do ever since the conspiracy theory video last year because conspiracy theories and cryptids kind of go hand in hand. I loved conspiracies as a kid, and the same goes for cryptids. I was obsessed with this shit as a kid. Absolutely loved it. The thing is though, as a kid, you kind of lack critical thinking, so and I assume many other people, used to believe this shit. I believed in all of it because I was a kid with an active imagination, and honestly, I kind of wanted it all to be real, even if deep down I kind of knew that it wasn't. I've since grown out of that, and I assume many of you are in the same boat. But some people don't really grow out of that childlike sense of wonder. Some people go their entire lives believing in cryptids regardless of if they're plausible or not. Some people believe in them simply because they just want to believe, others because they've heard convincing stories, and occasionally you'll find people who have had actual experiences with this kind of stuff. People believe in cryptids for a variety of reasons, and I hate to break it to the believers out there, but your favorite cryptid, more likely than not, doesn't exist. Regardless of if they exist or not though, I find many cryptids to be incredibly fascinating because many of them work as really interesting case studies in how human memory and LARPing can get in the way of the scientific method. Today, much like the conspiracy theory video, we'll be going through some of my favorite cryptids that I've heard of over the years, as well as some of the more notable ones, discussing their origins, any evidence that may exist for them, and why they probably aren't real. So smash the motherfucking like button! And let's get weird, let's get wild, and dust off your tinfoil hats for this Internet Idiocracy Halloween special as we take a look at the weird world of cryptids.
You run over the hole and you look down the hole and you see Sasquatch looking up smiling, and two hands are closed and he says, red pill or blue pill?
Let's kick this one off with one of the classics, the one everybody knows. Bigfoot. In case you're somehow unaware, Bigfoot or Sasquatch is an 8-foot tall, bipedal, hairy fucking ape man. The name Bigfoot comes from the fact that some of the only physical evidence of it are gigantic, human-looking footprints. Thousands of people over hundreds of years have reported seeing these big-ass apes in the woods, with many variations in many different cultures. There's the Native American Sasquatch, the Himalayan Yeti, the Australian Yowie, and my personal favorite, the Florida skunk ape. Imagine that, you go to your fucking backyard, see a fat fucking ape with his green stink lines emanating from his pores, and he fucking braps at you affectionately. Bigfoot didn't quite become a pop culture thing until the late 60s, early 70s, when the famous, or infamous depending on how you look at it, Patterson-Gimlin video was filmed. This iconic film shows what appears to be a straight-up Sasquatch in broad daylight, and single-handedly kickstarted the entire Bigfoot phenomenon. To this day, people still claim that this is legitimate footage, even though I and many others heavily disagree, and bear with me, I'll get into why. But before we kill all the fun and crush all your dreams, I'd like to make it clear that I don't think it's entirely crazy for a giant humanoid ape to be living in the woods. Many Native American cultures supposedly knew of these creatures, drawing them on cave walls with other animals and including them into their lore, and some cultures even feared them. If the people who have lived here for thousands of years knew they existed and interacted with them, chances are they might have existed. You find a Sasquatch in the woods, you hold your hand up to his twat and he fucking queefs on you. Additionally, there once existed a creature similar to Sasquatch known as Gigantopithecus. These were basically 9-foot tall gorillas, though genetically they're more similar to orangutans. It's thought that they went extinct around 300,000 years ago, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything, as it's possible that they evolved over time to become the Sasquatch that we all know today. Now, if only we could actually evolve backwards and return to monkey, song out now on all major music streaming platforms. One piece of evidence for Bigfoot that I unironically believe are the vocalizations these things make. Sasquatches can apparently make some inhuman sounds that no other animal can possibly make, and it's some scary ass shit. The Sierra sounds were recorded in 1971 in the Sierra Nevada mountain range, and when you listen to it, you can hear what appears to be a bunch of strange howls and chatters that linguistic experts have analyzed and believe is actually a language. Huge if true, but unfortunately, it probably isn't. The thing about Bigfoot is that there simply just isn't enough evidence for it, and the evidence that does exist is shoddy at best. Firstly, and I've made this point when discussing aliens in last Halloween's video, and I'll probably repeat it a few times throughout this one, but eyewitness accounts are notoriously unreliable as pieces of evidence. The vast majority of evidence for Bigfoot is just stories and eyewitness accounts. Not exactly concrete evidence. You know, I'm not taking the word of some moonshine drinking hillbilly over like actual physical evidence, right? Secondly, and this goes for most cryptids, but there does not exist a single good quality video or picture of a Sasquatch. As soon as a good quality video does surface, it's usually debunked as a hoax pretty quickly. I mean, it's kind of clear that hoaxers will purposefully use bad quality cameras in order to hide the details so people can't see the zipper on their fucking monkey suit they bought at Party City. Like, how is it that we are in the 21st century? We got 4K quality cameras on our phones at pretty much all times, and not once has anybody ever captured a good quality video of one of these things. Statistically speaking, some of the thousands of people who have seen a Bigfoot had to have had a modern iPhone on them at some point. You'd think that with how accessible trail cameras are, that somebody's trail camera would have seen one of these things unobscured in broad daylight, but those don't exist either. Even the Patterson-Gimlin film, the video that everybody claims is definitive evidence of this thing, isn't that convincing. It was shot in 1967, and obviously camera quality wasn't that good back then. It's all grainy and shit. Even when people have done these like intricate restorations and somehow get this video in 4K, it looks no better. People claim that you can see like the muscles moving, proving that it's like a real creature, but that simply just isn't true. Like, there's no way you can make that out. Like, you're actually fucking lying to yourself if you think you can see this thing's fucking tendons contracting and shit.
When I looked at some of the frames that show the creature turning to look at the cameraman, and I compared those with apes, the similarities become abundantly clear.
Abundantly clear. Yeah, that's real fucking clear with its 4 pixels. Now, I'm not saying this video isn't real. It very well could show a real Sasquatch for all we know. I'm just saying that it's not that convincing. Even the backstory behind the video is too unclear and contradictory to really say anything definitively about it, though I'd recommend looking into that for yourself, because we don't got all fucking day here.
It's perfectly normal to admit to being aroused role-playing dressed as a fantastical beast.
What the fuck was that?
What do you want it to be?
I even think that many of the cliche arguments against Bigfoot tend to hold up. For instance, if these things are real, why has nobody ever found a body or even like a sleeping Bigfoot? A lot of the explanations that believers give for these easy debunks are often really far-fetched. Can't get a good quality video? Oh, well, that's because Bigfoot emanates an electromagnetic field that disrupts electronics. Nobody's found a dead body? Oh, that's because they bury their dead. They're intelligent enough to do that. Or even crazier, Bigfoots are actually aliens and are capable of teleporting in and out of our dimension, which is why nobody has ever been able to find them sleeping or dying or in groups. Yeah, that's some schizo shit. It's also very likely that many people who think they've seen a Bigfoot are really just mistaking it for a different animal. A grizzly bear, for instance, can stand on its hind legs and would vaguely look like a Sasquatch to the untrained eye. Fear is also a major factor here and is partially why eyewitness accounts are so unreliable. If you see something that you can't identify and you are freaked out by it, your brain fills in the blanks, which leads to false memories. Imagine this, right? You're in the woods in the middle of the night and you are scared shitless because, you know, you're in the woods in the middle of the night and you see a grizzly bear on its hind legs like 10 feet from you, shrouded in darkness. You're not gonna be thinking clearly and your brain might assume that that's a fucking Sasquatch. And like I mentioned, a lot of supposed Bigfoot videos don't tell you a whole lot either, since that blob of pixels could be anything from a bear to a hunter in a ghillie suit. People just assume that it's a Sasquatch because they want it to be. There just simply is not enough reliable, concrete evidence to definitively say that Bigfoot exists, but many believers will often cite the phrase, Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, which is not at all how the scientific method works. If you hypothesize that this thing exists, and any test that you perform to prove this thing's existence come back negative and tell you absolutely nothing, then chances are it doesn't actually exist. Finding Bigfoot ran for 9 fucking seasons doing this exact fucking thing. I used to watch this show a lot as a kid, and I don't know how I stomached it. It is fucking heinous. Boring as shit. Now here's the deal, right? Despite all this debunking that I've done, I would love for nothing more than for Bigfoot to be real. Hell, if I had the time, money, or friends to go deep into the woods and look for this thing until I see one for myself, I totally would do it. The problem with Bigfoot, and I guess all cryptids for that matter, is that it's a logistical nightmare to prove its existence, and a lot of things about it make very little logical sense. But then again, the Pacific Northwest are some deep, unexplored woods, my friend, and if Bigfoots are as smart as believers say that they are, then they might just be out there. But beware, if Bigfoot is real, he will try to eat your ass.
Water, yeah, water, goddamn, water, water, okay, water, what, water.
I think that you would have to be suffering from some sort of mental ailment if you didn't somehow recognize this image. This is known as the surgeon's photograph and was once considered the only picture of Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. Everybody knows Nessie, and even though this photo is fake, the idea of sea monsters in general has remained constant throughout the years, and I think it's clear to see why. The oceans are notorious for being mostly unexplored, so if there are any cryptids to exist, they probably live in the deep ocean. Giant squids used to be considered cryptids for a long time before we actually found one, and the coelacanth was thought to be extinct for millions of years before somebody caught a living one. You've got the iconic Nessie, her American cousin Champ of Lake Champlain, Canadians have Ogopogo, alongside various other serpents and dinosaur-like creatures from the deep. If somebody offered me a large sum of money to prove that any cryptid exists, I would immediately head to the ocean. Thalassophobia for thee, but not for me. But here's the deal, right? The oceans are the most likely place to find a new creature or something we'd consider a cryptid, but that doesn't mean that every sea monster I just mentioned has any credibility at all. The thing about water is that it's incredibly easy to misidentify things in or on the water, especially if you're inexperienced and don't know what you're looking at. Almost every video or picture of a supposed sea monster could be numerous things. Depending on the location and habitats of animals and shit, these could be anything from overgrown water snakes, a group of sea otters, a manatee, driftwood, or even debris or garbage. Most people probably don't even know the vast amount of species that exist in our oceans, so when they see a fish or a whale or something that they're unfamiliar with, they'll immediately assume it's a sea monster. The oceans do have some weird shit in there, I will say.
I don't know what this is, but Jay says it's a fucking big sea turtle. Look, baby whale. It's a baby fucking whale, man! Holy shit, we are witnessing a baby fucking whale right here, dude.
My favorite misidentification is what people think are tentacles are actually this. That's a whale penis. No cock like whale cock. Any supposed physical evidence, such as strange carcasses washed up on shore, usually amounts to nothing. Most of the time, it's just some carcass of some other fish or animal that's been deformed due to the decaying process. The decomposition process is actually very different when the body is underwater and can cause some weird shit to happen. Probably can't show you that because, you know, dead bodies and shit, but you get the idea. Again, whales are often the culprits as well, because when a whale is beached and dies, sometimes pressure builds up inside their bodies and they fucking explode their intestines everywhere. These guts and intestines might occasionally be picked up by the tides back out to sea for somebody to discover later. I can't show you this because, again, fucking TOS probably, but seriously, look up videos of whales exploding. It's like weirdly entertaining. Or I'm a fucking psycho. Probably both. Whale would be like, pfft. Plus, you'd think that after years of looking for these things that you'd find something eventually, but that's rarely ever the case. There have been numerous expeditions and searches for the Loch Ness Monster over the past 90 some odd years, and at no point has any concrete evidence for a dinosaur or a new species ever been found. At the end of the day, the idea of sea monsters is what happens when human imagination gets the better of us. You see something that you personally can't explain from one of the most unexplored and mysterious parts of the world, and you immediately jump to the worst case scenario. It makes sense why so many works of horror involve the ocean, like Cloverfield, Jaws, Godzilla, Cthulhu, etc. It's because the ocean is such a mysterious place to us, so we just imagine all the different kinds of crazy shit that might be out there. It's scary because it's plausible and kind of close to home, but nothing exists until we can prove it. Why did I end like that? I don't know. Broken by Bigfoot. Me and Bigfoot getting fucked anally. Disgusting, vile Bigfoot anal. Loch Ness Monster tentacle porn. shifting gears, let's get into some of the more obscure cryptids. One of my personal favorites being the Jersey Devil. This one was brought to my attention by the Animal Planet show Lost Tapes, which I have a really old video about if you'd like to see me riff on that. We're not out of the woods yet, but Animal Planet tends to come up a lot with some of these cryptids. Just a bit of a pattern I've noticed. The Jersey Devil is less of a cryptid and more of a piece of folklore that has somehow bled its way into real life. As the story goes, in 1735, the Leeds family of the Pine Barrens of New Jersey were expecting their 13th child. Upon learning of her pregnancy, Jane Leeds supposedly exclaimed, "Let this child be the devil." Don't know why the fuck you would say that, but whatever. 1700s crackers be wildin', I guess. Anyways, fast forward 9 months and this kid is being born on a stormy night because this story couldn't be cliche enough. Baby pops out and shortly after morphs into a grotesque creature with the head of a goat, bat wings, hooves, and a forked tail, and flies out of the chimney into the wilderness. Moral of the story, use a condom. Did they have condoms in 1700s? I don't fucking know. Since then, people have reported seeing the creature throughout New Jersey, giving it the nickname Jersey Devil. The Pine Barrens are thought to be haunted or cursed by this creature, being home to many paranormal activities aside from the devil. The legend has been so prevalent in the area that there's even a hockey team named after the thing. The thing about the Jersey Devil, though, is that it's just that. A legend. There is literally no proof of this thing's existence at all, and its origin story is often completely misinterpreted. Firstly, let's just look at this logically, right? This thing makes no biological sense. It's basically a goat with wings that stands on 2 legs. The 2 legs thing already makes no sense because hooves for hands sounds like a massive disadvantage. The evolutionary purpose of hooves was to increase speed and are typically found on herbivores. Not only would they be unnecessary for the Jersey Devil because he can supposedly fly anyways, but if this thing is as violent as people say it is, then why would it have hooves if paws or hands would be much more efficient? And that's another thing. The wings on this thing make no sense. They are way too small for its body, and there's no way this thing is aerodynamically sound. You'd think that if this thing is flying around, more people would have seen it too, but you know, I guess not, right? The Jersey Devil's origin story also makes no sense. Firstly, it's obviously just a story and it obviously didn't fucking happen. There are way too many cliches for it to be real, and come on, the baby transformed into a fucking chimera immediately after being born. What is this, fucking Animorphs? And secondly, the devil is in the details. The story, the way that I just told it and the way that many others tend to tell it, is actually a misinterpretation. The supposed father in the story, Daniel Leeds, was a real person and was ostracized by the church and earned the nickname of the Leeds Devil. In fact, the Leeds family was not well liked at the time, and anybody who lived in the Pine Barrens apparently had a negative connotation to them. These people were already hated, so it was thought that they made up the story about the literal devil incarnate coming out of his wife's womb just to fuck with Leeds and his family. There are actually many versions of the story, and some of them have nothing to do with a baby turning into a monster or anything like that. Different versions of the story were combined and misinterpreted over time, and the original events and meaning of the story were completely muddied. The Jersey Devil, at the end of the day, is simply just a piece of folklore that people somehow took as legitimate. The story would spread by word of mouth for hundreds of years, with supposed sightings of the creature being reported as late as the 1960s. It's no surprise that as soon as cameras and the spread of information became more commonplace, that sightings stopped eventually. The only pictures of it that exist are obviously fake, the story people know isn't even accurate and clearly didn't even happen, and there's no biological basis for this thing to even exist. Unless there's some sort of religious magic fuckery going on, there is no way that this thing is real. The realest thing about this story is that it makes for a great Trojan ad. Don't want a demon coming out of your girlfriend's pussy? Use a condom. Or don't. Some bitches are into that.
Mothman, oh Mothman, you really know how to treat a lady. Mothman, oh Mothman, would you like to spend the night with me?
While this one isn't exactly the most obscure, it's definitely one of my favorites, so let's talk about the Mothman. Let's flash back to 1960s West Virginia to a little town known as Point Pleasant. From November 1966 to December of 1967, hundreds of residents of this town reported seeing a tall, humanoid creature with wings and glowing red eyes, alongside numerous other paranormal occurrences. This creature became known as the Mothman, and has become so ingrained in Point Pleasant's culture and lore that they even have a statue of him in the town. Now, the reason Mothman is my favorite cryptid is that, though he clearly isn't real, and we'll get into that, he has so many interesting pieces of folklore attached to him that you genuinely do make him seem larger than life. For instance, one of the coolest pieces of Mothman lore is that he apparently appears before big disasters to warn people about them. It's kind of like the Pokemon Absol, right? This actually seems to make sense when you look at the collapse of the Silver Bridge in December of 1967, which was over a year after Mothman sightings began in the area, and after the bridge's collapse, sightings suddenly stopped. The Point Pleasant area is also home to an old World War II munitions plant that is considered toxic to the environment, drawing parallels to a lot of the mutants and toxic waste monsters of comic books at the time. Other paranormal and strange occurrences also began happening in the town around this time, such as ghost sightings and reports of a strange man named Indrid Cold and his supposed involvement with the Mothman. Fuck kind of name is Indrid? Fuck you. Motherfuckers out here really be unironically named Indrid. You're lucky I don't fucking curb stomp you. The book and movie The Mothman Prophecies is supposedly based on a true story that happened during this time, though I fucking doubt that. Some people even believe that after the bridges collapsed, Mothman would go around to other parts of the world to warn about other disasters, serving as this like harbinger of doom, which is so fucking badass. Mothman is without a doubt one of the most fun cryptids that I've ever heard about, and it's incredibly entertaining to see how much lore he has despite having only been sighted for like a year. But here's the thing. Mothman, probably not real. The most common explanations for many Mothman sightings are that he's either a barred owl or a heron that have been misidentified by some frightened individuals. Most sightings of the creature tend to happen at night, where it's incredibly difficult to see things, making it incredibly easy to mistake an owl with a 4-foot wingspan as a much larger creature. Owls also have red eyes at night, so that would also explain Mothman's glowing red peepers. His glowing red peepers. Hey Peter, hey Peter, I got me some glowing red peepers. It's not even funny. Additionally, it's also possible that Mothman was simply just a case of mass hysteria in the Point Pleasant area. Think about it. In 1967, we're in the middle of the Vietnam War, and the Cold War was also a strong presence, so people were obviously on edge because of that. We're also in the middle of the space race, and comic books were incredibly popular at the time, so there was also kind of this sense of whimsy in the air, right? As soon as that first group of teens reported the Mothman sighting, the rest of the town joined in what was likely an attempt to escape from the cruel reality of the 1960s. Wasn't much to do back in the 60s, I guess, you know? That's not to say that every Mothman sighting is true, because like every cryptid, some people just obviously made shit up for clout. Hey yo, bruh. Hey yo, I'm about to go squatch him, bro. Trying to get some of that cryptid clout, bruh. Ah, well, if it isn't the most mysterious cryptid of all, Captain Clout himself. Fuck off, you fucking skinwalker, you freak. Hey, don't fuck with skinwalkers, man. Them bitches will fuck you up. So Mothman, you know, there's a pretty big chance that Mothman, you know, isn't real. You know, no pictures, no solid evidence, classic shit we've been talking about, right? But I just can't seem to keep this a secret any longer. Mothman is real. And I've seen him, because he tried to suck my toes. Merch now available. Unless my Teespring is still broken, in which case merch is not available.
Under the sea.
Where is...
I drink my pee.
Oh, he's over there.
Instead of talking about this one with the rest of the sea monsters, I decided to talk about this particular cryptid last because it accurately sums up a lot of this video and because I find it so personally interesting. Mermaids. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, idiot! Mermaids obviously aren't real. And you are very correct. Unlike a lot of the cryptids we've talked about in this video, nobody believes in mermaids. Everybody knows they're fucking not real. But Animal Planet once convinced a shockingly large amount of people that mermaids really do exist. And I was one of those people. Mermaids are one of the oldest folklore creatures in history, with almost every culture having their own version of them. So you could imagine that some people would claim to have actually seen them at some point. Explorers like Christopher Columbus and Henry Hudson both claimed to have seen mermaids, though it's likely that they were simply misidentifying things. The whale cock reemerges. Mermaids were actually the perfect thing for Animal Planet to try to prove the existence of, because it's such a huge pop culture thing that everybody is pretty much familiar with. This brings us to 2011 with the infamous Mermaids, The Body Found. This was a fake documentary made by Animal Planet that posited the idea of scientifically accurate mermaids. This wasn't dissimilar to Animal Planet's other programming at the time, such as their specials about scientifically accurate dragons, but the difference is that the dragon special made it very clear that they were hypothetical and fictional. The Mermaids documentary did not. It was played completely straight despite being completely made up, hence why so many people believed it. The YouTuber Billiam has a pretty good video on this whole era of Animal Planet, so go watch that video for a deeper look. I'll put it in the card right here. I was 11 when this mockumentary came out, and I remember watching it when it aired, so you could probably guess pretty easily that I fell for this hook, line, and sinker. There are old videos on this channel that are no longer public of me talking about how real I thought that it was. You're never seeing those videos, I'll tell you that much. I watched the supposed footage on repeat, and when the sequel came out with new evidence, I fell even deeper into the rabbit hole. I recall having heated debates in the comments of these videos defending their authenticity against people whose frontal lobes had fully developed and could easily tell that these videos were fake. But here's the thing though, I didn't believe it because I was a stupid kid. I believed it because I was manipulated. The reason that I'm talking about this obviously fake Mermaids documentary in a video about maybe but probably not real cryptids is to show how easy it is to fool people into believing stuff like this. What the Mermaids documentary does is that it shows the audience something that actually exists regardless of its authenticity, such as the bloop or the aquatic ape theory, and it stacks piles and piles of bullshit on top of that. They get you with the facts, and then they skew the facts. That's not all they do, because this bullshit sandwich is wrapped up in a story about conspiracies and government cover-ups, making it entertaining to a general audience on top of that. If you can entertain people, you can feed them anything. The Mermaids documentary is a prime example of how a lot of these cryptids and urban myths become so popular. There may be some truth at the beginning, but over time, layers of bullshit are tacked on to said truth, which muddies the waters on what's real and what isn't. It's the same thing we discussed in our conspiracy theory video from last year, but in a different kind of way. Mermaids clearly don't exist, but the Mermaids mockumentary is an interesting lens to look at cryptids through. If all it takes is fabricating evidence and a good story, then it's no wonder why so many people still believe in cryptids.
Mothman. There's no need to feel down, I said Mothman.
So, after all the cryptids we've looked at today, there are a few key takeaways from the whole cryptids phenomena. Some of this is going to be a repeat of the conspiracy theories video, so I'll be brief this time around. 1. Most cryptids make little to no logistical sense. Like, okay, I could maybe buy a big-ass ape living in the woods, but I can't buy that nobody has ever killed one or found a dead body or anything like that. Logistically and statistically, it has to have happened by this point, but it simply hasn't. If you have to make up supernatural shit to explain more supernatural shit, chances are that shit ain't real, or at the very least you have no evidence of it. 2. Most evidence of cryptids usually comes in the form of anecdotes and eyewitness accounts, which are notorious for being inaccurate. The human brain will play tricks on you, fill in the blanks, and alter your perception of a situation, and is therefore incredibly unreliable. I don't deny that plenty of people genuinely think that they saw a cryptid, but whether what they saw was actually a cryptid or not is entirely up for debate. This leads nicely into number 3, which is that confirmation bias typically runs rampant in situations involving cryptids. You want something to be a cryptid, so you'll find any reason for it to be, disregarding anything that proves that it isn't. You want to believe that that big mass of fur you saw in the woods was a Bigfoot, and you'll tell yourself anything you can to prove it, while also conveniently disregarding that it happens to be bear season. Like I mentioned earlier, believers in cryptids will often say that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, which generally speaking can be true in some cases, but in the case of discovering an unknown animal, it holds no water. You need to find actual evidence before you can claim that a creature is real, not the other way around. You can't claim a creature is real and then find the evidence for it later. That's the exact opposite of the scientific method. 4. Like we discussed with the Mermaids section, malicious intent and hoaxes run rampant in the cryptid community, and the way they do this is usually by attaching some kind of story to it. If there is profit to be made by selling you on a mythical creature, people will lie and embellish the truth in order to get you to believe it. This will then muddy the waters and give credence to liars, which then makes every story also seem like a lie by proxy, even if it isn't. At the end of the day, cryptids are our modern day urban legends. Some of them in a literal sense, others in more of a pop culture sense. You know, I recognize that after all the debunking and cynicism throughout this video that I seem like a killjoy asshole, and while I am, I also do genuinely enjoy cryptids. Like, I know that like 99% of them probably aren't real, but that doesn't make them any less entertaining. Like, I know for a fact that Mothman doesn't exist, but that doesn't make him any less cool. Plus, there are just a ton of cryptids out there that are simply just fun to read about regardless of their authenticity, like the Skinwalkers, the Flatwoods Monster, the Hopkinsville Goblins, literal actual goblins, the Ningen, where every artist rendition of them is fucking prime meme material.
Okay, I pull up. Those motherfuckers copyright claimed me.
Cryptids are like real-life legendary Pokemon, if you want to think about it that way, right? Cryptids in the conventional sense, like the way I've described them in this video, are kind of a result of a bygone era. These urban legends developed over time and became bigger than themselves, and sometimes bigger than the actual truth of the situation, largely due to technology and the spread of information, or rather the lack thereof. And this has kind of made its way over to the internet in a weird way and adapted to the times. Internet characters like the Slender Man, Siren Head, and pretty much every SCP are the internet's modern equivalents to the cryptids of old. The difference is that these new ones kind of have this level of self-awareness where everybody knows that they aren't real, so we just kind of have fun with it. The one thing that real-life cryptids have that internet ones don't, however, is that we can't know 100% for sure what's real and what isn't. So it does have a little bit of a layer of realism to it, even if they most likely don't exist. I am not as obsessed with cryptids now as I was when I was a kid, but every now and again I'll check up on what people claim is the big new evidence for Bigfoot or sea monsters or what have you. But that is all I have for this video, so be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed it, and be sure to comment down below what your favorite cryptid is. And if you've ever had a real encounter with a cryptid, then feel free to share that in the comments down below as well. I think it would be interesting to hear the perspective of people who have actually experienced this kind of shit. Or I can laugh at you for being a schizo. That works too. Subscribe for more videos like this one, and consider pledging to my Patreon to help support the channel. I've been MattCMG, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Happy Halloweener, my friends.
Bitch. bitch, I'm a monster, no good blood sucker. Fat motherfucker, now look who's in trouble. As you run through my jungles, all you hear is rumbles. Kanye West samples, here's one for example. Gossip, homie, just stop it. Everybody know I'm a motherfucking monster. I'ma need to see your fucking hands at the concert. I'ma need to see your fucking hands at the concert. Profit, homie, I got it. Everybody know I'm a motherfucking monster. I'ma need to see your fucking hands at the concert. I'ma need to see your fucking hands. Sasquatch, Godzilla, King Kong, Loch Ness, Goblin, Ghoul, a zombie with no conscience. Question, what do these things all have in common? Everybody know I'm a motherfucking monster. Conquer, stomp you, stop your silly nonsense. None of you homies know where the swamp is. None of you homies have seen the carnage that I've seen. I still hear fiends scream in my dreams. Murder in black convertibles. I kill a block, I murder the avenues. I rape and pillage your village, women and children. Everybody wanna know what my Achilles heel is. Love, I don't get enough of it. All I get is these vampires and bloodsuckers. All I see is these homies I made millionaires, milling about, spilling their feelings in the air. All I see is these fake fucks with no fangs, trying to draw blood from my ice cold veins. I smell a massacre, seems to be the only way to back you bastards up. Gossip, homie, just stop it. Everybody know I'm a motherfucking monster. I'ma need to see your fucking hands at the concert. I'ma need to see your fucking hands at the concert. Profit, homie, I got it. Everybody know I'm a motherfucking monster. I'ma need to see your fucking hands at the concert. I'ma need to see your fucking hands. I'm a motherfucking monster!
Happy Halloween. Kill me, please. End me. End my life.